Mics are on. Good evening. The caucus meeting of January 4th, 2022 will now come to order at 7:45 p.m. As the Committee of the Whole just finished discussing committee assignments, during the Committee of the Whole report this evening, I will ask for a motion to adopt the rules of council. And if there are no objections from council, I will ask for a single motion to adopt the recommendations for all committees, and then another single motion to adopt the appointments to the boards and commissions for a total of 3 separate motions and votes this evening, although I'm just realizing we didn't do the...
Mr. Chair, I have boards and commissions scratched off.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I think that they decided that they were going to do it at a later meeting.
That's correct.
But
Yep.
you have the President Pro Tem that you have to vote for.
Right, okay, thank you. So our new mayor, Daley Jones, has asked for 6 pieces of legislation to be considered under suspension of the rules this evening. I will mention each one, then ask her to briefly summarize the legislation for us before turning to council to see if they have any questions or objections. So let's start with Ordinance 2022-1. Mayor Daley Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you don't mind, with this first piece of legislation, I'd like to take a few moments to talk holistically about all of these pieces of legislation, and then I'll dive into the first one, and we can knock them out one by one if that is okay with council.
Certainly.
And also, just an update, I believe that the clerk of council provided you with one change on the mayor's court organizational chart. There was a clerical error on the first one that you received, so the one that you received today should be the one that you should be working off of. Council members, I've spent a considerable amount of time meeting with my transition team and people within the organization of City Hall, trying to figure out the best organization from my administration. I do actually want to acknowledge that I have a member of my transition team here in the chambers, Amy Flannery, and I certainly thank her and all of the people who've been serving on that team for their time. They spent a lot of time on this, and I certainly appreciate that. I am creating one new department and one new job in the mayor's office, but the vast majority of what I'm asking you to look at today is not making any changes to staffing or anything like that. It's reorganization and putting the right departments in the right place. For example, the Director of Human Resources is going to and should be dealing with human resource issues and not also dealing with building department issues. So I wanted to move that under a different director, and that is what the vast majority of the reorganization is. So, Mr. President and council members, regarding Ordinance 2022-1, this is Chapter 131, the Mayor's Office. So outside of the new Department of Recreation and Public Engagement, this is the only spot where a new job is being created. I am asking to create a special assistant to the mayor position. This is a management role. The person will be my liaison to city council, will help the city track contracts and grants so that those types of things are not slipping through the cracks. The person will be working on special projects and tracking the progress of those projects to ensure that the directors and I are fully updated. This person will help me with outreach, research, and we'll be working very closely with all of the directors in the city. I think the best way to say it is that this person will be my right hand. While this position will have some functions that are similar to the person who would be holding the administrative assistant position, The focus of this role is not in helping me respond to our residents who are calling the mayor's office and scheduling my meetings, handling the calendar, that type of thing. The focus of this role is to make sure that our city is running at peak efficiency. The other major changes in this office is that I am removing the IT division from HR and will be overseeing it directly, and that the receptionist position that is currently under HR will be moving under the mayor's office. Regarding IT, I feel, given its importance and some of the issues that our city has faced, especially this past year with regard to IT, I want it directly under the mayor's office. As far as the receptionist, that person is literally on the front lines responding to resident calls and requests every day. And again, I feel that they should have direct communication with me in my office to make sure that we are responding to our residents' needs. Finally, I'm moving the part-time communications manager from the planning department and moving that under the mayor's office. It is important that all of the communication from the city, I believe, should be housed together so that our residents and the media are getting the same message. I think that is something that I feel very strongly about communication, not just with city council and our employees, but also that our residents are really being communicated to and making sure that we are doing that correctly. Mr. President, that is Chapter 131.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? Councilman Limpert?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. So this isn't, I'm just setting the tone since this is the first one. What I would be interested to see is at the end of this, and I think I recently asked you about this, is to get a total net change of personnel across the 6 piece of legislation, and then from a pay bands perspective, what's the net change in cost from what you're thinking? Obviously, you haven't filled these positions, but what that cost difference would look like today, and what the band change could be from what is currently slated, based on those new positions that you're proposing. So this one, I think there's only one position that you're talking about here, but I'm not as much interested in the individual changes from a cost perspective as just what the total looks like across the whole reorg.
Mr. President, to Councilman Lippert, yes, Councilman, I will work with Finance Director Kopfer on making sure that we get that information to you and all of City Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Limpert. Any other questions from council regarding this one? Okay, seeing none. Next is Ordinance 2022-2. Mayor Daley Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Chapter 139, Department of Public Safety. The change that is being made here is moving the building division from human resources to the safety department. I personally never understood why building was moved under human resources, and while our previous human resource director was amazing and handled things well, I think that even she would admit that that she probably wasn't qualified to handle the building department. I feel very strongly that human resources should be focused on human resources, and so I'm asking to move the building division under the safety department. I think this move makes a lot of sense. The building division ensures that our projects and properties are built to and maintained to our city code. This is for safety purposes. Additionally, both safety and building work together very often. So, for example, a building inspector might cite a car for being parked on the grass during the day. But our police officers are allowed to enforce that same section of the code on evenings and weekends when our building and property maintenance inspectors are not on the job. Now, I'm not saying that works out all the time, but the point is that when you look at how closely both of those divisions work together anyways, I think it makes sense to move that department here.
Thank you, Mayor, and I would agree with you. Are there any questions from council regarding 2022-2? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to Ordinance 2022-3. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is establishing a new Chapter 145, which creates a Department of Recreation and Public Engagement. This would be a newly created department, which council would need to approve this position if I were to move forward and then interview people and appoint someone here. It does create the position as director, and previously the Division of Recreation and Division of Springvale, Oxcart Pantry, the juvenile diversion programs, some of them reported to the mayor's office, some of them were under different departments. I think that it makes sense for our city to bring these divisions all under one department. It does break up the Division of Youth and Family Services to separate the juvenile diversion program from the Oxcart Pantry. And then we would change that position. The position of administrator will then move to become more of a part-time position as opposed to administrator position.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question regarding this proposal. Under this scenario, would the current positions of Recreation Commissioner and Assistant Recreation Commissioner still remain?
That is the intention, that they would remain commissioners over Parks and Rec and the Assistant Commissioner. Now, as I've communicated to council since the election, my priority for my directors is to come on board and then to make recommendations to myself, which will then go to city council as to further structural changes that might occur.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions from council regarding Ordinance 2022 are we on 3 or 2? 3.
That'd be
3.
three.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, momentarily lost track. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Ordinance 2022-4. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Chapter 167 of our code. It is dealing with the Human Resources Department. And again, that we had summarized that previously, but the intention is to move the building division, the IT division, and the receptionist position from the Human Resources Department.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Councilman Kelly?
I just have one comment. I'm happy to see the Department of Human Resources doing the Department of Human Resources job and not trying to supervise or be a director over something that they shouldn't be, that now they can handle problems wherever that's going to be.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay. And then just a couple more here. Next being Ordinance 2022-5. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is amending and reestablishing Chapter 179, which would be changing the focus and the name of this department. The new name would be Department of Economic and Community Development. And I felt that this department needed that name change along with a change of focus. to make sure that we really are focusing on economic development. Our city is big enough, our commercial development is important enough that I don't want a consultant filling that role. I want the director in this department to have a proven economic development background, and I want them working full-time on bringing and keeping both retail and office jobs to our city. So that's the major reason for that name change that I'm bringing forward to you. We will continue to have a city planner, and the rest of the departments, the Division of Engineering, and will remain under this department.
Thank you, Mayor. And just a comment, I would agree with you that the city, the days of the city having a part-time economic development person that shares his focus with multiple communities does not benefit North Olmsted. So I'm glad to hear that this one is in the hopper. Are there any questions from council? Mr. Kelly?
To Mayor Jones. Just explain to me how engineering ends up under this particular heading.
Sure. Working with the transition team, most cities of our size, their engineering division works very closely with the economic development and planning positions within their cities, because there's a lot that goes into when you're looking at site plans and when you are talking to developers, it all ties hand in hand with each other. So I would like to continue that relationship and keep that within that department.
Thank you.
Not to say that our engineering department, though, Mr. President, to Councilman Kelly, doesn't, of course, work throughout the divisions, with our service department and a number, our wastewater treatment department, just because these positions and these divisions are housed under these departments, look, the intention of our city is to always be working together and making sure that, that the employees are communicating with each other as we move forward with these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Heeman, then Councilman Lippert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to point out that our city has always had the city engineer in a much more streets and, stormwater, wastewater kind of role. But when you're looking at, large development, large projects, architectural and engineering are hand in hand, and that pairing is necessary to lay out any new development or redevelopment that might happen. So while I think that, we've not looked at it that way before, I do think that that's its proper fit and home. And then, of course, the city engineer would continue on those things with environmental as they had been in the past. It sort of spreads its wings a little bit further in that realm. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lippert?
Yeah, I just had a little bit of clarification. So 2021-5 mentions Division of Aging, right? Am I reading that
2022,
right?
you mean?
I'm trying to piece these together here, looking at the description. So,
Just to clarify, Mr. Lippert, you meant 2022-5, correct?
yeah,
Not 21? Okay.
yeah, thank you, 2022.
Yep.
So is it aging under 5, or is it under recreation?
Mr. President, to Mr. Limpert. So currently, the Division of Youth and Family Services and Aging, they're currently under our Department of Planning.
Right.
That is, I am asking you to move them to the newly created Department of Recreation and Public Engagement, and that then our Economic and Community Development Department would be then working directly with City Planner and Division of Engineering.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding 2022-5? All right, seeing none. Finally, ordinance 2022-6. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the salary ordinance. There are 3 new positions being created: the Special Assistant to Mayor, Director of Recreation and Public Engagement, and Administrative Assistant to that Director position. Otherwise, the only things happening within this ordinance are moving the salary ordinance around to reflect the changes of the structure that I'm asking you to consider today. The ordinance needs to match the structure, and so therefore this salary ordinance, if you do indeed move forward with passing these other pieces of legislation, it needs to move forward with the reorganization. It would be super helpful to myself to be able to start offering jobs to some of these positions, and then also be able to finish up interviewing directors and bring them to council for your consideration. And I cannot bring those director positions forward to you until council has approved this, which is why I am asking you to consider these pieces of legislation on suspension of the rules this evening. I would like to also address the concern that many council members have about the salary ordinance. I know that I've talked to quite a few of you about making sure that we do go back very, very soon and look at the positions and make sure that things are being coordinated. If there needs to be any salary changes, for example, with part-time positions and that type of thing, that we do that in a coordinated effort. And so I will bring that back to council for your consideration in the very near future. But at this point, those are the only changes that you will see on the salary ordinance this evening. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions from council? Okay, seeing none. At this time, we're going to assign legislation to committees. Ordinance 2022-7 will be assigned to Finance. And also, before we talk about committee meetings next week, with the new BZD chair, pending approval this evening, entertain scheduling a committee meeting regarding Smoke City Vape.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I think I just briefly spoke with you earlier. I will not be scheduling that at this time, but plan to schedule that fairly shortly.
Thank you. All right, so scheduling committee meetings for next Tuesday, January 11th. Councilman Glassburn.
Mr. President, is the only committee hearing for 2022-7, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Would it be in the interest of everyone to consider holding that committee hearing before the next council meeting?
Mayor, can that wait until the 18th? Or do you need it discussed prior?
Yes, it could wait.
You can wait, okay, all right. All right, so,
If that's the will of everyone, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, and so, Mr. Sorry, I think you're going to ask about those on suspension, any reservations. I don't think we necessarily would need a meeting if Mayor Jones can provide the information that I was requesting earlier, but that would be my only reservation on suspension. And again, I don't think we would need to wait. If we need to have an earlier meeting due to time, I'm happy to do that, but I would like that information before suspension. So I don't think that would impact the having that on the 18th, but just want to let that be known. Thanks.
okay. All right, so if I'm hearing everybody correctly, we will not be scheduling any meetings for next Tuesday, January the 11th, correct? Correct. Okay. Before we end caucus, is there anything any member of council would like to add? Okay. Seeing none. Anything from the administration? Thank you. All right, seeing nothing else, the caucus meeting of January 4th, 2022 is adjourned at 8:10 p.m.
Did we discuss suspension?
We just.
Okay. Great.
The council meeting of January 4th, 2022 will now please come to order. The audience is invited to join council in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the acting clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Broussard,
Present.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Present.
Mr. Glassburn,
Here.
Ms. Heeman,
Here.
Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Mr. Limpert,
Present.
Mr. Scarl,
Present.
Ms. Williamson.
Thank you. The following legislation is being considered for suspension of the rules this evening. On first reading, ordinances 2022-1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and -6. And moving into reports, Mayor Daley Jones, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to say Happy New Year to our residents, our employees, and all of City Council. I hope that everyone had a great holiday season and that the new year is a successful one for everyone. This is certainly a different view of council chambers for me, but I am looking forward to working with everyone and providing outstanding services for our residents. As discussed in caucus tonight, before council are various changes in my attempt to reorganize City Hall. After the election, I set up a transition team and immediately started digging into the organizational chart and trying to arrange things in a more efficient manner. I apologize for asking for the reorganization and salary ordinance on suspension tonight, but as I stated before, I will not be able to appoint directors to the positions that I would like to unless council approves the reorganization. As there are a lot of things coming up in the next few weeks, I would love to get our directors on board, and so I respectfully ask council to please consider these topics on suspension tonight. The reorganization has already started with some changes, but once this passes, I hope to be able to hit the ground running with appointments. In that regard, I would ask if it is council's desire to please be available over the next few weeks to hold intergovernmental relations committee meetings, or if there is a need for a special council meeting to consider my appointments to the director positions. Unfortunately, as COVID is affecting everyone, our City Hall has also been hit by the virus. This is a situation that we continue to monitor, and the city will adapt as need be. In that light, I did make council members aware late last week that our senior center was closed due to COVID and staffing issues. I plan to keep council up to date on this situation, but it is imperative that we ensure as safe as an environment as possible for both our staff and the residents who visit our center. I continue to ask that anyone who's feeling ill, residents, employees, council, boards and commission members, to please refrain from going to work and visiting City Hall. I'm asking that our Human Resources Department and our Finance Department continue to work with employees who might have COVID to ensure that they get the help they need while staying safely away from City Hall. In addition to closing the Senior Center for health reasons, it was brought to my attention after my first day at work yesterday that the Senior Center did have some minor flooding issues that had occurred last week. The damage is minor, but I just wanted to make council aware of that and that we are looking into the cause of that, and I will keep you updated about that. We're taking that into account, obviously, in our decision about reopening the center as well. I look forward to working and communicating with council through the upcoming term to ensure that we continue to do what's best for the residents of North Olmsted. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. And before we move on to the other reports, I'd be remiss if I didn't welcome everybody in the audience this evening to the first meeting of the year, and also a warm welcome to our two newest members of council, Councilman Scarl and Councilwoman Gilchrist. Welcome, and looking forward to working with you and obviously everybody else here this evening as well. Director of Law Garreau, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief note. First of all, as well, I wish everyone the best of luck and health and success in 2022, and hopefully the year will be improved over 2021 in many respects. Look forward to working with Mayor Jones and her new administration. I've spent the past week working with her as well as with, not to name names, but I know they've really been working on this. Donna Eccleston and Lisa Kidd in HR. They are the keepers of the flow charts, and if you're following what's happening with different positions moving around, they've really done a nice job to help out. So we think we've got together everything we need to present to you here tonight. I would note that that doesn't mean that there might not be changes moving forward. Obviously, when we retitle a position throughout the code, that position is referenced, the old position is referenced many times. So there might be some cleanups, there might be some reassignment of responsibility, but this is a necessary first step for council, should you so choose to approve these requested changes in the reorganization, and that we would be coming back to you with some additional legislation to make sure that we don't miss anything. When you change a department, you move everything around, there's cross-references, and it can get kind of confusing. So we're going to continue to work on that. In 2022, I'll be working with my administrative assistant, Annie Kilbane, who's been with me for the past 12 years. She'll be continuing in her service in the office. Brian O'Malley, the first civil assistant, will continue to work in the office as well, and Michael Gordillo also will continue to work with me as the prosecutor for the city of North Olmsted. All in all, though, I look forward to 2022, look forward to working with each and every one of you, look forward to working with Mayor Jones, and I wish the best of success to the administration. And hopefully, like I said, 2022 is going to be a lot better year than 2021, and I'll keep my fingers crossed and pray for the same. So thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Director of Finance Kupfer, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, I do, Mr. President. The November month-end detail and summary reports were emailed to you this evening with by my assistant. And if you think it's hard changing the structure throughout the charter, try changing all the account structure of a general ledger that's been here since 2005. So there'll be changes that'll be coming along as well once these are approved as well in the finance department. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Moving into council committee reports, the Committee of the Whole met this evening beginning at 7:12 p.m. Present were myself, council members Limpert, Glassburn, Heeman, Kelly, Scarl, and Gilchrist. And the purpose of this meeting was to adopt council rules, pick committee assignments, and assign council members to respective boards and commissions. We did not do that last part. We will be doing that at a later date. The first thing the committee did was adopt the council rules. The committee recommended to continue moving forward with current council rules. So at this time, is there a motion to adopt the council rules recommended by the Committee of the Whole?
Mr. President,
Mr. Limpert.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the rules of council as written.
I second.
Motion to adopt council rules made by Councilman Limpert, seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
The council rules are adopted by a vote of 6-0. Discussed next were committee assignments. The Committee of the Whole recommended the following standing committees be filled with the following individuals. Serving on the Finance Committee is Chairman Glassburn, Vice Chairman Limpert, and Member Williamson. Serving on the Environmental Control Committee is Chairman Scarl, Vice Chair Gilchrist, and Member Kelly. Serving on the Intergovernmental Relations Committee is Chair Gilchrist, Vice Chair Heeman, and Member Scarl. Serving on the Streets and Transportation Committee is Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Glassburn, and Member Gilchrist. Serving on the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee is Chair Limpert, Vice Chair Williamson, and Member Heeman. Serving on the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee is Chair Williamson, Vice Chair Kelly, and Member Glassburn. Serving on the Recreation Committee is Chair Heeman, Vice Chair Scarl, and Member Limpert. So at this time, is there a motion on the floor to approve these standing committees as I've reported out on them?
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to approve and appoint the council committees as reported.
Second.
Motion to approve council committees as reported out this evening, made by Councilman Limpert, seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
The council standing committees are approved by a vote of 6-0. Next, Councilwoman Williamson was nominated for President Pro Tem. Is there a motion on the floor to appoint Councilwoman Williamson as President Pro Tem?
Mr.
President?
Motion to appoint Councilwoman Williamson as President Pro Tem made by Councilman, I believe, Glassburn, seconded by,
Kelly?
I thought it was Kelly.
oh, I'm sorry, so
Either way.
we'll go with Kelly and Glassburn. How's that?
I second that.
All right, excellent. The motion made to appoint Councilwoman Williamson as President Pro Tem, made by Councilman Kelly and seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson is appointed as President Pro Tem by a vote of 6-0. Bear with me. So the Committee of the Whole meeting ended at 7:35 PM, and that will conclude my Committee of the Whole report. Councilman Kelly, Vice Chair of the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Limpert, Chairman of the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Heeman, Chairwoman of the Recreation, Public Parks, and Buildings Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do not. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Councilman Glassburn, Chairman of the Finance Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman Kelly, Chairman of the Streets and Transportation Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Scarl, Chairman of the Environmental Control Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my understanding there was an environmental control meeting prior to the end of the year, and I would defer to the former chair of the committee to provide that report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Scarl. I do have that report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. The Environmental Control Committee met on Tuesday, December 28th, 2021, to discuss Resolution 2021-92, an ordinance replacing existing Chapter 927, parentheses, erosion and settlement control, end paren of the Street, Utilities and Public Services Code with new Chapter 927, parentheses, erosion and settlement control, end paren, to meet new and updated requirements of the Ohio EPA associated with National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, parentheses NPDES, end paren, permit program requirements, and 2021-93, an ordinance replacing existing Chapter 928 Comprehensive Stormwater Management of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code with new Chapter 928, parentheses, Comprehensive Stormwater Management, end parentheses, to meet new and updated requirements of the Ohio EPA associated with National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, parentheses, NPDES, and permit program requirements. The meeting was called to order at 7:46 PM. Present were committee members Heeman and Glassburn, council members Broussard, Kelly, and Limpert, Council President Jones, the city engineer, and the wastewater treatment plant superintendent and guests. Ms. Heeman requested that the city engineer, Mr. DeFranco, explain the purpose of the legislation, which in essence is a housekeeping issue based on changes made at the Ohio EPA. Mr. DeFranco explained that these changes are in response to the EPA updates, which occur approximately every 5 years, and that they specifically address storm runoff during construction and the construction process, and then after construction of the process, the construction process is completed. The wastewater treatment plant superintendent, Brian Bloom, reiterated those comments and confirmed that, in fact, these changes are required to be made based on the EPA updates and are viewed as mandatory updates to our code. Ms. Heeman made a motion to recommend 2021-92 and 2021-93 to all of council, seconded by Mr. Glassburn. The motion passed unanimously. The meeting concluded at 7:54 PM. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Gilchrist, Chairwoman of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Dennis Lambert, who resides at 25057 Cary Lane, emailed the clerk regarding the upcoming year. He congratulated the mayor and council members on their victory. He said Mayor Jones has given the impression she is going to delegate more responsibility, which he believes is a good thing. He also said he hopes she will continue to meet and respond directly to individuals as past mayors have. Mr. Lambert said he especially appreciates the job that the finance director Kopfer has done. He hopes that as an elected official she will share any concerns with the public as well as privately with the mayor. Finally, he stated he does not believe the city needs to have a full-time safety director. And the full letter will be attached to the minutes, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director. Moving into audience participation, thank you for attending tonight's council meeting. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address council, please come to the podium, state your name and complete address for the clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city and proceed with your comments. You will have up to 5 minutes.
Yes, my name's Thomas McCafferty, McCafferty. I wish to address the council. I've been a resident since 1981.
Mr. McCafferty, if
Yes.
you could just state your complete address for the record.
Yes, it's 23508 Clifford Drive. Have issues with ordinances with vicious animals. I was involved in the May 13th event. The aftermath, changes were made. A lot of situations were done up. Mine are as the situations I don't believe can be implemented. I've been addressed to the issues of, we're going to get help from the county. and other things. My talks to the county are they have no visions now or in the future to increase their kennels. So I don't know what help they can give us. The next part I have into the thing is, it's my understanding the county health department is responsible for all dog bites in the county, and they've fallen short of their mission also. I'm not getting any satisfactory answers to the point where I feel that outside agency like the State Highway Patrol, the Ohio Attorney General's office, needs to come in to evaluate the new ordinances to see if there's a feasible way to implement them. Aftermath or afterthought is always great to have, but in this case, the safety of the community is still now at large because these animals still are at large. My next point is I don't believe the city should have used the county office to sit there and help prosecute, since they had more jurisdiction and more ways to sit there and help with the prosecution. Unfortunately, there was a lot of things wrong, but I'm just here to implement. The county is in charge to investigate. They investigate, but they don't have an investigator. They supplement this out to the cities and townships and use their personnel. I feel that this should not be. I think if the county is going to be using these people, they should be responsible for training them and certify them so this could be handled in a more uniform factor. To this date, the dog owner has yet to be brought under any prosecution or even be reprimanded. All the ordinances don't do any good if you got somebody that's not responsible. And she has proven that she's just not responsible. I feel that 8 months, it was long enough to get some kind of prosecution and get this stuff taken care of. I'm not a lawyer. I've been working with the prosecutor's office, has been very good to me. They kept me informed and so forth. But I don't think 8 months is a reliable time to sit there and get this taken care of. We're talking about the safety of the community, not just North Olmsted, but our fellow community people around us. These dogs were more than enough to take me down. My main concern is I got 3 young kids that live right beside me, 3 that just moved in across the street, and I got a 76-year-old lady that walks her little poodle. None of these people would have survived these dogs. I mean, it's just a frightening situation. I moved out of Cleveland to get away from stuff like this, and fortunately, it took 40-some years, but it caught up here too. So I believe that the city needs to sit there and make sure it doesn't happen again. I thank you for your time.
Mr. McCaffrey, you have one
Yes.
minute remaining.
Pardon me?
Well, you have one.
No, that's okay. Okay, thank you very much. I thank you for your time, and hopefully we can get this concluded.
Thank you. Law Director Garreau, I spoke to Mr. McCafferty after a recent council meeting, and I believe most of the delays are occurring at the Rocky River Municipal Court level. Is that right? Continuances?
Mr. President, thank you, and Mr. McCafferty, thank you for the opportunity to come up. Thank you for coming up here and sharing with us your concerns. We've been in frequent contact with him to make sure that he understands the process and what's happening as we go through it, through each step. So the matter remains set is before the Rocky River Municipal Court. It is a considerable period of time that it has been pending. It's not extremely unusual to see a set of charges, particularly when there's 16 of them, that may be set for a trial 6 or 7 or 8 or even 9, 10 months down the road. It's not optimal, I suppose, but it certainly does occur. In terms of the civil case where we seek to make binding upon Ms. Ramos the administrative order, I know that her lawyer withdrew. So now she no longer has an attorney representing her. We actually have received the preliminary injunction requiring her to surrender the dogs for destruction. She has ignored that. We are now filing the next step when that court order is violated. We'll be filing a motion to have her held in contempt. The contempt charge would bring with it the either comply or you can be incarcerated and fined. I believe there's a day of justice coming. I know justice is slow, perhaps in this situation. It seems slow. It's not extraordinary for cases to go through the criminal justice system into the civil system in such a time frame. But I do know that there's a day coming. And it's my intention, working with Mr. O'Malley, to ensure that what justice is required is what's going to be meted out. We're going to ask for it. I don't control the decisions that get made by the court. The judges do. But we're going to utilize every tool that we have available to us to ensure that there's some consequence for what she's done. You're right. She's seen fit. Her lawyer's gone. Now she might want my time for another lawyer. I mean, it's gone on long enough. I agree with you. But I do know that there will be a trial date set in the near future, and I'm sorry I don't have my matrix. I grabbed the wrong matrix. It's got the last set on it, so I don't have the newest date, but I can certainly have my staff call you tomorrow. I can call you and let you know the exact date, and I can let council know as
They've
well.
already informed me of that. Thank you. I appreciate
Okay, all right.
Brian's informed everything, gave me all the information.
Okay, good.
But
It's frustrating, I understand.
It's frustrating, but it's a safety issue. Those dogs are somewhere, and wherever they're at, those people are at risk. And I don't want to be the one to say, damn, we could have did something and save somebody else's aggravation.
I understand. And we don't have, and just for council's information, we have no knowledge or information concerning the dogs being in North Olmsted. She's indicated those dogs were removed, and we have not had any indication or evidence to suggest that they were not removed. And I know that there's been some surveillance to ensure that they're not there, but we don't have any information. She has not disclosed where they are, other than to say that she gave them to a third party who can't remember names, can't remember numbers, can't remember addresses, things like that. So those types of perhaps convenient memory lapses will have to be rectified by the court when the court enforces the administrative order and requires her to comply or deal with the consequences.
Understood. Thank you, Director. Councilwoman Heeman, you had a question or comment?
Just a quick question. Law Director, do you think the courts are still behind now because of COVID? Are they catching up with their hearing dates a little bit better now? Or what's your feel for that? Because I know they were pretty well backed up for a long time.
Mr. President, I think they're moving along pretty good now.
Okay.
I don't think that they're scheduling jury trials very quickly, and there is a jury trial demand on this file.
Well, they were
so I'm
just
not sure that there's-
suspended again downtown.
Yeah, the jury trial cases, I think you saw Common Pleas Court last week was going to suspend temporarily some of their jury trials. Most of the courts I deal with work very hard to ensure that they don't have jury trials if they don't have to, because they don't want 40 people coming in and dealing with COVID issues and sitting in a jury box with this literally separating people by plexiglass. It's pretty cumbersome, but that's the way people are entitled to a jury trial. They're going to get their jury trial. They may not have it as soon as they otherwise would have anticipated, but it'll come. But yeah, that's the long answer. Short answer is they're moving along better than they were, and I think they've adapted pretty well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments from the audience, we will now move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading. A resolution introduced by Mayor Kennedy and Council President Jones, 2021-79. A resolution authorizing the Director of Planning and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted for Community Development Block Grant Cdpg funds for the fiscal year 2022 for the West 231st Street Rehabilitation Project, further authorizing the mayor to accept the grant if awarded and to execute a contract with Cuyahoga County and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Councilman Limper.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-79. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2021-79, made by Councilman Limpert, seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-79 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Resolution 2021-80, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. A resolution authorizing the Department of Public Service to advertise for bids for diesel fuel and gasoline products for use by the city of North Olmsted as per specifications on file, and authorizing the mayor, after approval of the Board of Control, to enter into a contract to purchase such products.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kelly.
I move to adopt 2021-80 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2021-80 made by Councilman Kelly, seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-80 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Resolution 2021-83, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. A resolution authorizing the Director of Planning and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted for Cuyahoga County Supplemental Grant Program, further authorizing the mayor to accept the grant if awarded, and to execute a contract with Cuyahoga County and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kelly.
I move to adopt 2021-83 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2021-83 is made by Councilman Kelly and seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-83 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
On second reading, Ordinance 2021-92, introduced by Council President Jones, an ordinance replacing existing Chapter 927, Erosion and Sediment Control of the Street Utilities and Public Services Code with new Chapter 927, Erosion and Sediment Control, to meet new and updated requirements of the Ohio EPA associated with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, permit program requirements. Ordinance 2021-93, introduced by Council President Jones, an ordinance replacing existing Chapter 928, Comprehensive Stormwater Management of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code with new Chapter 928, Comprehensive Stormwater Management, to meet new and updated requirements of the Ohio EPA associated with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, permit program requirements. Legislation on first reading. 2022-1. An ordinance, do I read this first, Council President? Okay. An ordinance amending and reestablishing Chapter 131 of the Administrative Code entitled Mayor in order to, 1, create the positions of a part-time communications manager and special assistant to the mayor within the office of mayor. 2, establish the division of information technology/network administrator as a division of the city within the office of the mayor. And 3, remove the divisions of Springvale and Parks and Recreation from the office of the mayor and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mayor.
I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Mr. President, I would move that we adopt 2021-1 and suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review This ordinance provides for the mayor to establish their office and associated positions. That's in the safety, health, and welfare of the city of North Olmsted, and I would ask for a second.
Second.
Can I, who's the second? Thank you. Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
No with comment. While I fully applaud Mayor Jones's vision and already knowing how she wants to better organize the city to provide more alignment and efficiency for the service of the residents, I still have some additional questions that I think that should be discussed, and happy to support an earlier meeting once those questions are answered to move forward with this legislation. For suspension, my vote is no. Thank you.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 5 to 1. If there is anyone in the audience who'd like to address Ordinance 2022-1, please approach the podium now.
Mr. President, seeing none, I would move that we adopt 2022-1 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2022-1 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-1 is adopted by a vote of 6 to 0.
Ordinance 2022-2, an ordinance amending and reestablishing Chapter 139 of the Administrative Code entitled Department of Public Safety in order to add the Division of Building to the department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. President,
Councilman Glassburn.
I would move to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes, with comment, establishing the Department of Public Safety is clearly in the public safety interests of the citizens of North Olmsted.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Motion passes by a vote of 6 to 0. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address Ordinance 2022-2, please approach the podium now.
Mr. President, seeing none, I would move that we adopt 2022-2 and ask for a second.
Second.
Thank you. Motion to adopt Ordinance 2022-2 made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-2 is adopted by a vote of 6 to 0.
Ordinance 2022-3, an ordinance establishing a new Chapter 145 of the Administrative Code entitled Department of Recreation and Public Engagement and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mayor.
I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Heeman.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings regarding 2022-3 22-3 regarding the Department of Recreation and Public Engagement as a new chapter in our 145 Administrative Code. I think that it is within the best interest of all of those facilities to be held under one roof, and I'd ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review is made by Councilwoman Heeman and seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 6-0. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address Ordinance 2022-3, please approach the podium now.
Mr. President, seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to adopt 2022-3 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2022-3 made by Councilwoman Heeman, I believe seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call, please.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-3 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Ordinance 2022-4, an ordinance amending and reestablishing Chapter 167 of the Administrative Code entitled Department of Human Resources in order to remove the Division of Building and the Division of Information Technology, Network Administrator from the department, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. President, I would move to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review. This matter, as with each of these 6 pieces before us, on first reading, was discussed by Mayor Daley Jones, and this will provide for implementing this sooner will provide for the better welfare of the citizens of North Olmsted, and I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 6-0. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address Ordinance 2022-4, please approach the podium now.
Seeing none, Mr. President, I would move that we adopt 2022-4 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2022-4 made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-4 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Ordinance 2022-5, an ordinance amending and reestablishing Chapter 179 of the Administrative Code entitled Department of Planning and Community Development in order to, 1, rename the Department of Economic and Community Development, 2, remove the positions of Economic Development Manager and Communications Manager from the department, and 3, remove the Division of Youth and Family Services and Division of Aging from the department, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that we suspend the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review as it is in the safety and welfare interests of the city of North Olmsted to get our divisions in proper order for Mayor Jones to hire personnel for these areas, and I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 6-0. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address Ordinance 2022-5, please approach the podium now.
Mr. President, seeing none, I would move the adoption of 2022-5 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2022-5 made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-5 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
And this is a special ordinance for me to read. Ordinance 2022-6. An ordinance amending the rates of compensation for administrative personnel by establishing the Department of Recreation and Public Engagement with corresponding new positions of Director and Administrative Secretary, renaming the Department of Planning and Community Development to the Department of Economic and Community Development, creating the new position of Special Assistant to the Mayor within the Office of the Mayor, creating the new position of Juvenile Diversion Coordinator while removing the Administrator within the Department of Recreation and Public Engagement, retitling the Secretary position in Department of Public Service to Administrative Secretary with corresponding wages, moving the Planning Department Communications Manager to the Office of the Mayor, moving the Outreach Case Manager in the Department of Planning and Community Development to the new section of Recreation and Public Engagement, reestablishing the divisions of Information Technology, Building, Division of Aging, Springvale, and Parks and Recreation within new departments, and eliminating the Division of Youth and Family for the years 2022 and 2023, and otherwise restating the compensation rates and description for various administrative and legislative personnel for the years 2022 and 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. President, I would move to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review of 2022-6. As the mayor described for us earlier this evening, a number of these changes extensively. It is in the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents of North Olmsted that we get these positions filled and offers made to new personnel, and I look forward to learning more about the various roles and responsibilities as we move forward, and I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes, with comment, I echo Councilman Glassburn's comments that I look forward to hearing more details about the role responsibilities as well as the compensation implications going forward. Thank you.
That motion passed by a vote of 6-0. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address Ordinance 2022-6, please approach the podium now.
Seeing none, Mr. President, I would move the adoption of 2022-6 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Ordinance 2022-6 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-6 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
2022-7, a resolution authorizing the mayor to purchase computer file storage services from Box.com at a cost of $360,000 as an emergency exception to public bidding, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all documents necessary to effectuate such purchase and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving into scheduling committee meetings, Councilman Glassburn, Chair of the Finance Committee, would you like to schedule a finance meeting for Tuesday, January the 18th?
Yes, Mr. President, and I would request that I believe the mayor's director of IT or the mayor's designate be present for that. And if, Mr. President, do you have a time period other than, say, 7:15? That would be a better suggestion for this committee.
I think 7:15 is probably a good call, 7:15 or 7:20.
Okay. Well, let's go with 7:15 on the 18th.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor to excuse the absence of Councilwoman Williamson?
So
So
moved.
Motion made by Councilman Limpert. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that-
Gilchrist.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councilwoman Gilchrist. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson is excused by a vote of 6-0. With the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this meeting of January 4th, 2022 is adjourned at 9:02 p.m.